We have to be very honest about this. Tom Aspinall is getting screwed. And when we break this down in this video, you'll see exactly why this is one of the most ridiculous decisions by the UFC recently. Now, I'll preface all of this by saying, I understand that the UFC is not always a meritocracy. I get that. I understand there's times where legacy fights are bigger, there's bigger money fights, and there's other things on the table and logistics at play where certain fights don't make sense. But that is not the case. That is not the case whatsoever. At a certain point, there was a time where Jon Jones and Stipe Miocic made sense. 12 months ago, 14 months ago, there was enough evidence to suggest that this was the bigger fight. But the MMA world is such a fast-paced moving sport that things change literally overnight. So since the last time Stipe has fought in 2021 against Francis Ngannou, and since the last time he's won in 2020, a lot has changed. 4 years. 4 weeks goes past and you can miss 100 things in this game. 4 years, that's generations ago. And I need to preface this video by saying, yes, Stipe Miocic is a legend. Stipe Miocic is probably the best heavyweight we've ever seen. Statistically, the best heavyweight we've ever seen because he has the most title defenses. And he deserves respect for that. Does he deserve this title shot next? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And when we dig into the actual statistics on this, it will make a lot of sense. And before we do that, I just want to give you a little soundbite which is going to let you in on how insane this is. Because since Stipe last won, Francis Ngannou has won the UFC title, defended the UFC title, left the UFC, had 2 enormous high-profile fights with Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua, in which he got flatlined, and then he's already got a date booked in the diary to come back to MMA before we see Stipe Miocic. Just think about that for a second. Think of that timeline and everything that has happened. So when I say that's an eternity, 4 years in MMA, I'm not just saying it for a soundbite. I genuinely mean it. It's a very, very long time. So getting back to the point at hand, Tom Aspinall. Why does he deserve this? A lot of people are going to hear my voice. They're going to hear a little British twang. Maybe I pronounce words a little bit differently. People are going to say beans on toast, probably say something about my teeth. I have heard it all when it comes to the bias of the British. I am speaking objectively here. Completely objectively. Now we know that Dana White has gone away and done infinite media tours where he speaks and sings the praises of Jon Jones. And I get it. I understand it. He's essentially their golden goose, or has been for the last however many years. And again, I need to preface this entire conversation by saying Jon Jones is one of the greatest ever. Jon Jones has had an incredible career. Jon Jones has an immensely better resume than Tom Aspinall. At light heavyweight, I need to add to that. All of these things are true. And also what is true is Jon Jones has a chance of beating Tom Aspinall. Let me be clear about that as well. We've never seen Tom tested. And this is exactly why I want to see this fight. Because people are saying that Jon is the best. People are saying that he's been beating top contenders and legends since I was in diapers. I saw in a comment the other day. Exactly. That's exactly my point. He is that good. He did go out and smoke Cyril Gane in a matter of a round. That's exactly why I want to see this fight. I want to see how good Tom Aspinall is. Has he gone out and had a few impressive performances? And yes, he's very good. Or is he very elite? Is he going to go on to become one of the greatest all time? And this is the fight that we need to be able to decide that. This is the fight that we need. We need Jon Jones and Tom Aspinall. The Stipe Miocic fight makes no sense whatsoever. And I'll tell you why. Because Jon Jones most recently has had 1 fight in the heavyweight division against Gane. An impressive performance, I'll take nothing away from it. Stylistically a nice matchup, sure, but still an impressive performance. In the heavyweight division for Tom Aspinall, he's had 9 fights in total. 8 wins and 1 loss. And I honestly would put an asterisk over the loss because not only was it an injury, he came out and redeemed the loss as well. So did he really even lose? I think most fans are happy to scratch that one off. to be perfectly honest. He's got 8 wins, 8 finishes, and 7 are within the first round. He's left the first round once, and that was against Andrei Arlovski, of which he then took down and submitted. He's got knockouts, he's got submissions, and he's barely left the first round. And when you look at people that he's been facing, Alexander Volkov, that win has aged like fine wine, because not only has the man gone on to become somewhat of a social media darling, he's also putting together some very good momentum and hasn't lost since their last matchup. And when you look at how Tom Aspinall actually beat him, it wasn't via a decision. It wasn't even by a knockout. It was a submission. Now, the reason that's important is because Alexander Volkov is a veteran, over 50 professional fights, and the last time he was submitted was 14 years ago. 14 years ago. So Tom Aspinall is doing things that people are not doing. Again, we look at the Pavlovich fight. Now, people have very short memories, because let's remember rightly, a lot of people were saying this was the man to beat John Jones. You may have forgotten that, but I did not. A lot of people were saying that. They were saying the power punching and the boxing, that was going to be enough to beat John Jones. Now, he steps in the cage with Sergey Pavlovich, but not on a fight camp, not with a build-up, not with any preparation, to fill in for what was originally meant to be John Jones and Stipe Miocic on basically a couple of hours' notice. Then he had the stress of obtaining his visa, and then what happens? Because he's essentially coming off the couch and he's trying to get into a scramble of a training session, I put inverted commas because if you're a couple of days before fight week, you're not going to be able to train. You're barely going to be able to spar, and you probably shouldn't because the risk to reward is not good enough. He tweaks his back. So he's not even able to train in the warm-up. He gets no notification that he's going to be fighting the most dangerous and scariest man in the heavyweight division, in Pavlovich, who was on an absolute tear in Madison Square Garden in replace of the greatest of all time. What happens? He goes in there and starches him within 69 seconds. Marcin Tybura, same thing. Sergey Spivak, same thing. And these are the very best in the heavyweight division. We're not talking a few perennial contenders of the top 15. We're talking the very, very elite. We're talking the top 5. This man is essentially going one by one by one and dismantling them. And then he goes out there the other day against Curtis Blades, who stylistically should be his toughest matchup. Incredible wrestler, very good striker, incredible power, and coming off some good momentum with a finish against a rising contender like Jailton Almeida. Stylistically, probably his hardest matchup. What happens? Knocks him out with a jab, essentially, within a minute. And you look at what is happening in front of you, you have a look at the objective facts, you have a look at the fan engagement, and that's another thing that I need to bring back to Tom. Again, if this was a fight which was undeniably a bigger pay-per-view draw, I get it. I understand it. Now I get that the pay-per-view model is bigger in America. And Stipe Miocic is probably, I say probably, a bigger star in America because he isn't very active on socials. And that's just the truth of it. And in this game now, you have to be an entertainer as well as a fighter. And the same can be said for John Jones, to be perfectly honest. They're not really active on YouTube. They don't really have a growing community on there. Of course, they're still loved and they're still very well known. Don't get twisted. But they're not giving insight into their life or their camp. Not that active on the other social media forums. And like I said, this sport moves very fast, and it's what have you done for me lately? So if you haven't fought lately and you haven't won lately, are you engaging with fans? Are you keeping them up to date with what you're doing, with your training, with your life? Anything. It could be what you've had for dinner, but these things aren't happening. So guess what? Stipe Miocic is getting largely forgotten because we're getting a new influx in fans. And when you think about the growth of the sport since the UFC apex in COVID days, the sport's probably grown 50%. So there's going to be a lot of fans that have never even watched Stipe Miocic fight live. And the fact that he doesn't create content or have a very present online forum, they won't really know who he is. And then you look on the contrast what Tom Aspinall's doing. He's starching all the top contenders. He's giving you viral knockouts. He's giving you impressive performances. And he's also giving you content every single day. Whether it be on YouTube, whether it be on TikTok, whether it be on Instagram. He's doing cross collaborations with massive names like Eddie Hall. And even more contextually in the UK, big brands like the Spud Brothers, as stupid as that sounds, but they're massive brands now. People like JJ Ices, massive brands now. If you're thinking, what are these things? One's a baked potato company and one's an ice cream company. And you may be thinking, what has that got to do with fighting? It has everything to do with fighting, because they're bringing in new people to the game. They're bringing in new audiences. They're staying relevant, which is super important in this world where content is king. Now, whether people want to admit it or not, you cannot just be a fighter in today's market. You cannot. It's not enough. You have to be doing both, whether you like it or not. So if you're not fighting, you have to be at least creating content. And Stipe Miocic and John Jones, really, neither of them are doing that. It's farcical. Let's be real about it. And it's an absolute injustice to Tom Aspinall. He's had to go out there and defend the interim belt. And we can't get the fight that everyone wants. The John Jones fight. How good is Tom? Let's find out. That's all I'm asking. That's all I'm asking. Is there a chance he goes out there and smokes one of the best ever in a round? Yeah, there is a chance. Is there a chance that John Jones goes and does what we've always seen him do? Yes. That's exactly why I want to flip and see it. That's exactly why. But let me know in the comments what you think. And as always, keep it casual.